So I'm going to go do a little bit of change in programming, and I will go and do videos from the front seat of my car. Wonderful studio location, quite professional. And I'm doing so to follow other peers in their path to success in what they call not doing engagement hacking grifting. So the topic of today's video will be on doctrine. So what is doctrine? Doctrine is the procedures, practices, or instructions in which an organization follows or practices. Kind of redundant, but that's what it is. For example, in the United States military, you have their own doctrine. You have, say, institutions for doctrine, like the United States Army TRADOC. Doctrine can be applied to, say, observations on other organizations' practices by peers, other separate groups, or even hostile groups. For example, Ukrainian doctrine, Russian doctrine, North Korean doctrine. And it's just basically a shorthanded way to describe their own practices, procedures, and methods on how they accomplish tasks. In the context of United States Army doctrine, there are some methods in which copying it directly may be useful. For example, how to operate certain equipment in inventory, how to do everything in a completely, basically standard practice, and that's great and all. For example, trying to zero an M4A1 carbine, or an extremely similar clone rifle which uses the same identical sighting system, ammunition, all that sort of stuff. However, if you try and copy everything directly, it wouldn't go so well. And in the context of the prepared citizen, there are several methods why. A complete lack of manpower, a complete lack of resources, non-standardized things outside of the United States military and NATO logistics chain. And while a little bit of elements here and there may be useful when borrowing from doctrine, it should not be imitated and copied directly. So that is a problem. For example, marksmanship for an AR-15 rifle may not work if you have, say, a 16-inch rifle with a completely different set of sights and a United States Army M4 carbine with only the United States Army sighting systems on it. Say a 16-inch rifle with flip-up backup iron sights with a completely separate sight radius. You have a low-power variable optic, and the rifle itself is made up of separate parts completely different from the United States military inventory. Like a low-powered variable optic, for example. Sure, there have been cases, say, in SOCOM where low-powered variable optics have been used, but in the whole grand picture of conventional United States Army doctrine, may not fully apply. So, if you take a look at, say, United States Army FM 322-9 marksmanship of the M4 and M16 rifle, it would not mention anything about low-powered variable optics. Yet those things are quite useful and are quite prevalent with use by the prepared citizen and other firearms owners. Yet if you try and look up information on how to use one of those and employ one of those properly, it would not work, if only using U.S. Army doctrine. You have to look at other pieces to gather information and set that into your own practices for yourself, your own people you're working with in your local area of operations with what sort of resources you have available. Copying everything from United States military doctrine and applying it blindly without any sort of adaptation would not work. Another example out there is that in the United States military itself, no plan ever survives first contact with the enemy and has to be modified or changed, if appropriate. The old adage goes, semper gumpi. And this applies to any sort of conflict that happened in the past, is happening in the present, or happening in the future, in which there be a change or deficiency in, say, resources, manpower, logistics disruptions, all sorts of several factors out there. The terrain that is operating in, SOPs may need to change to adapt to those things, and the practices, procedures, and actions by the enemy. So that is something that is kept in mind. And this is especially egregious when it comes to, say, training institutions. United States Army TRADOC, Training and Doctrine, in which there are elements that are great to be applied for, say, having recruits from having no sort of military experience whatsoever, having no experience in handling military equipment or military adjacent equipment, to that of having a basic set of standards in proficiency in soldiering. So, but when these training situations occur, everything's already pre-planned, everything's set out to be with a predetermined outcome for the most part. So if a situation that predictably has these things with these sorts of resources available, if the doctrine is applied, then you'll achieve mission success. Not necessarily in the real world, where things can be rapidly different and developing. So, maybe I should do more videos in my car. Maybe I should put out more videos about this topic. Certainly better than going outside and actually doing shooting, right? So, if you do just enjoy this video, brought to you by Glow So Bright on Military Doctrine is not the end-all be-all, go ahead, give this video a like. If you don't, give it a dislike. Comment down below what you think. Read the video description. And if you'd like to support the channel and I don't know, join a pending Discord server that I may not complete, whatever, the fun privilege of doing that when it's more fun to be in other groups. What do you think I am, a Discord moderator? Go ahead, subscribe to the Subscribe Star and donate to the Ko-fi. But the best way to support and share the channel is to engage, subscribe, and share. Now, as always, I'm your best ever doctrine parroter. Thank you very much for watching.